Hello, everybody. Back again. Okay, so we're rattling through these really well. I hope you're enjoying it so far. Remember, this is all about giving you a better insight as to what is it behind this fitness thing that I should be focusing on. So obviously, the videos are structured in a way that you get a piecemeal, putting them together and using some of the information that I'm sharing with you from my experience to be able to give you an insight as to how you can make the most of your fitness and well-being. If that's something that interests you. If it doesn't, fair enough. If you're into other things, then do that. But if you want to hear a little bit from somebody who's done some of this for a long time, then basically you're in the right place. I'm happy to be here. And as usual, we've got 0 viewers. Well, that's fine. I don't mind. You can always watch these and ask questions on YouTube. It's fine also. I don't mind. I'm here to help. And I'm sure that as you realize how fundamentally wonderful I am, you'll just keep on adding more and more questions, or actually watch live, or maybe even share a little donation with me if you'd like to, which isn't necessary, but is obviously very much appreciated. Now, today, again, we are talking about what is my metabolism. If I come in closer, my voice sounds really funky like this. But if I come back here, it sounds just the way it normally does. Okay, a little bit nauseating, but hey, it's the only one I have. Okay, so my metabolism. What is it that I'm thinking about when I talk about my metabolism? Now, people who make supplements love to talk about their metabolism. Metabolism is just something that's been bandied around and hoarded up by some kind of marketing campaign to suggest that if you're very cunning, you can change your metabolism. To a certain extent. But the extent and realistic extent that you can change your metabolism is based more on how your genetics works and your age and your lifestyle factors than anything to do with any supplements you're going to take. Now, partially what happens, and the reason why I'm very skeptical about supplements, is there's a number of factors they don't really address with you. Okay, so scientifically, every piece of food, everything you drink has a value to the body. It performs a certain function. And in the body, this amazing machine that does all these different things, like anything else that you might think mechanical or otherwise, it needs to be fueled in a certain way, it needs to be treated in a certain way. So for example, if we think about smoking, we now know smoking is very bad, and those are your lungs. You're going to need those. So the effect of long-term smoking is detrimental to your body. We kind of all know that now, but it's still allowed. Anyway, that's a different debate. So the thing is, the chemical process that occurs there means that the damage that you've done via one thing affects how you do other things. So your cardiorespiratory system will be very poor. We know that because it's clogged up with shit. No surprise, no headlines there. So the same way I eat, the same way I put fuel into my body, most people, it's a very uneducated way of daily survival. They have very little idea of, one, what it is they're putting in, and two, what quality of food it is they're putting in, if they do. So first of all, the first thing you have to understand is, what does my body need? If I hired a car, the guy in the shop is going to tell me, in the garage is going to tell me, please put only unleaded 91 in this car. Do not put diesel into this car. It will not work. Once I understand that that is the basic rule, he won't say, if I said to him, well, what do I put into this car? Anything you like, tomato juice, just give it a go, You know, fundamentally, that's not really going to work as a long-term coping strategy. But understanding this is exactly what this car has been designed to consume, to perform optimally, gives you a better chance of enjoying the car. You get to go and have a road trip. You get to drive without worrying that it's going to break down or seize up because I put diesel into a petrol car. Now, the fundamental thing here is that cars can go a long way on the wrong fuel if you put the wrong kind of fuel in, but then they seize up. And it's something that's an inevitability. It can no longer cope. It starts to break down, and all of a sudden it just hits a point where it won't be able to work anymore. Now, fundamentally, that's exactly how the body works. Many of these systems, an engine in a car, a pump like the heart in the body. So we've emulated through systems and cars that we have to be like the ultimate machine, which is our body. But unfortunately, because we're not taught these things to a degree where we understand them, people don't apply basic principles consistently, basically because they're unaware of what it is. Now, the body needs a bunch of stuff. Hydration. It needs nutrition. It may need some supplementation, but that's basically dominant based on the first two things. And it needs other elements, of course, like oxygen and all those things that keep us safe and warm, being dry and all those things, not being in hostile environments, sanitation. But we'll focus basically on the nutritional side of it. Now, once you've got a nice place to live, somewhere to relax and to recover, you can focus on feeding yourself right. Now, there's a paradox here. Most people work so hard, they just eat for the sake of eating. They think, well, what's for lunch? Yeah, something in a bun, something with pasta, something, you know, from a tin, something with XYZ, a prepared meal that would come out of a cookbook. This is the thing they tend to miss then. They've eaten, but they've given very little regard to the components that went into that food. How much of it was processed food? How much of it was fresh food? How much of that food they had and the intervals at which they had it. These are so important to ongoing fitness and for reciprocal benefits for a long-term strategy, which means that you actually consider each stage of the process to make sure that what you're doing has an optimal payoff. And this takes a lot of attention. And most people are willing to settle for second best. And when you settle for second best and just putting ominous kind of deals and fuel into the body, what happens is you're never really able to enjoy optimal health based on scientific fact. Now, science obviously changes, and the way we've seen science over the years has changed, but we're starting to get a better kind of ballpark, it won't be 100% figure, of understanding what it is the body really needs. And it can vary from person to person, but pretty much we're all the same and we all have these same systems in place. And unless you have some congenital illness or pathology that's affected what you're doing, this advice only really applies to when everything is equal and the body is working as it should, optimally representing a large population of people. So fundamentally then, what we're looking at when we talk about macronutrients, macro sounds bigger than micronutrients, which are your smaller elements. So macro, we come back to that, fat, carbs, protein. Micronutrients are all your minerals and vitamins and salts that you need in order to find a balance to keep the chemistry in the body within survivable and healthy levels. Now, I could eat peanut butter sandwiches all day long. I'd love to do that. But after a year of doing that, my body would be a representation of what I've done consistently. My body cannot make things out of things I have not given it. Like a chemistry set, if I want to make certain things, the elements have to add up and they have to be consistently apparent and abundant for me to be able to do so. If I ate only fat, my body would struggle to be able to do some of the functions. The functions in the body relate to the systems in the body. Now, the systems in the body, cardiovascular system, immune system, respiratory system, reproductive systems, you know, all these things are the systems of the body, and they need good nutrition, good hydration to be able to sustain themselves, to work in an optimal way. Now, as you age, your body obviously becomes harder for those things to sustain the functions that they had when you were a kid or a bouncy 25-year-old made of rubber. Fundamentally, then, your body was very good at producing much more chemicals and hormones. But as you age, your body says, okay, we've got to be a little bit more careful here how we feed this, because I'm not able to cope as well as I used to. But with practice and with discipline, your body can cope sufficiently well to make sure that you match up the kind of food that you're eating, the quantity of food that you're eating, and the result that you want to achieve through exercise thereof of those first two things. So we think then, coming back to macro, remember the micros we have to try and derive from the foods as well, rather than just supplements. And we're going to try and think about how the fats in my body, how the protein is used in my body, and how the carbohydrate is used in my body. Now, they share some common characteristics, but also they need to have their own individual territory, because they do different functions and they can bounce off of each other when there's something wrong or when something's not quite aligned. Over the other side, the smaller elements, my micronutrients, my vitamins, my salts, will start to balance out things that happen and small chemical things that need to be happening in my body, in the light of, if you think of bricks and then the mortar that runs between the bricks are the macros and the micros are the mortar or cement. I think that's the word. So fundamentally, finding the right balance between what your carbohydrate needs are. So if you're a super athlete, your carbohydrate needs are going to be through the roof. If you're sitting at a desk, your carbohydrate needs are still apparent, but in less quantities. And the same way, if you're a bodybuilder, your protein intake is going to be higher than somebody who works at a desk, and your carbohydrate might be higher. By finding out how much you need and the essential amounts that you need daily, so there's a quota that you need to satisfy each day. Now, these are carbs, proteins, fats. Now, if I don't get enough protein to match my needs or my demands, then what will happen is my body will scavenge from existing supplies. If it's not receiving that in a 24-hour period, it starts to then think of alternative ways of deriving the needs it has to repair itself, for the muscles, for example. The same way with carbohydrate. If you don't have enough carbohydrate in the body and you don't have enough fat on the body, it will start to break down the muscles to be able to feed itself. So it can backfire if you're not giving yourself an adequate amount of, a calculated amount of these three components each day. That's important that you sit down with a trainer or a nutritionist and figure that out, because it is a lot of suck it and see. And to be honest with you, we can work on basic equations that will help you to understand and compute when and how much you should be eating each day, and you can match that up with the exertion levels and the demands that your workouts have. But that's something that uniquely specific to each individual. Once you get that right and you start to understand that the meal that I sit down to eat, or the way that I focus those things, is not about how much or having a prepared meal that's a lasagna. It might not be right for you. You might have to focus on getting sources of protein and sources of carbohydrate and sources of fat. And the meal may look a little bit weird, but in its lack of conventionality, you're also satisfying the needs of the body more specifically. And that can only mean one thing, that the body is then able to reciprocate. It's like Christmas in there. Everything the body needs is getting, and it's saying, wow, just put that in the muscle. Yep, use that up there. Great, plenty of this. Now with minerals and essential minerals and vitamins, what happens is once you hit a certain level, the body will say, okay, we're no longer needing any of these things, or we no longer need these things. And then it will start to reject them from the body. But as soon as you run out, as soon as those levels start to wane again over those 24-hour period, they need to be reintroduced. So I need to have a system that reintroduces them and addresses the deficiencies that I might have because I'm a vegetarian or a vegan or have allergies. I have to keep on thinking about how I can make up and scientifically match up my activity to my nutrition and hydration. And that's when your metabolism becomes most important. Globally, we call it metabolism, but more specifically, we try and think of it in those three ways. These are the keys to any kind of fitness regime. If you can nail these and learn, like for example, in the morning, I'll have 5 fried eggs. I'll have a banana and maybe a little pancake. It depends, but my activity needs will match those things. And that's through experience. That's through applying it. That's through knowing how my body reacted over 100 days of exercise, or how much I had to change that to match up. So if in my head, I'm able to understand what my calorific output is, I'm able to match that to make sure my body doesn't suffer because of an excess of exercise or under eating to match up that gap. So everything has to match up. So your macros match up with your exercise, things will work. If you don't know what calories are, if you don't know what the difference between fats, proteins, and carbs, and how frequently and the amount of protein you're supposed to be eating each day is, you're in for a rough ride. And you will not see any real results beyond a certain initial phase of training. So you have to get scientific, you have to get disciplined, and it's no mistaking how hard that shit's going to be. It won't happen on its own. it will not occur unless you put the effort in. And sometimes that means having to scale back from work. So if your priorities are work, well, your food will just have to do. You make do on whatever it is that's nearby. But if you prepare yourself, if you think ahead, if you have a 24-hour window where you grab food from the supermarket that's seasonal, that's fresh, you'll find that you're going to get much more out of it. Now, quickly on this, basically what we're looking at here is we also have to consider the quality of the food that I put in. Now, the digestive system starts here when I see the food, and here when I mean, you don't really hear food unless it's alive, but how I smell things and how I prepare my food. Once I'm preparing my own food, I actually start the salivation and all the juices in my stomach start to clear out everything in anticipation of what I'm about to receive. When food is laid out before you, you just grab it from a shelf. The body's come from an office environment and it's gone to eat. It's had no chance to prepare itself. The chemicals and the hormones in the body have not been able to be part of the process of what this food preparation is. So even if you do prepare your food at home and bring it in and eat it at work or wherever it is, your body's digestive system begins the moment you start to prepare in the supermarket and your eyes identify the components that you need. And once you become good at that, you start to bring it home, you're chopping it up, you're putting it in the pan, you're cooking it, whatever you're doing to it, the body starts to get ready to receive it. Then the mouth starts to salivate. This is the first process. And the body can only break down so much in the mouth. So it coats everything. We chew it slowly. Chew your food, very important. And then basically what happens is the more you chew, the more salivation occurs. And your body is able to produce enough of these fluids to then aid the second part of the digestive process, which is when it hits the stomach. In here, it will break down the food depending on how well you've chewed it and how much saliva is in the food and other factors, you know, age and... Okay, second time it's done that. Okay. There would be kids. There must be someone we can blame for this. Here we go. Okay, just bear with me 2 seconds, sorry. Hello, I'm still here. So fundamentally, what's happened is my camera stopped again, and I'm most apologetic for this. Okay, just 2 secs. Hang on, close that. Just as I was getting into full speed there, huh? Okay, so here we go. All right, well, this is the way this goes then.